Joining us now, Angela Morabito. She is a spokeswoman for the Defense of Freedom Institute and a former Department of Education press secretary under Betsy DeVos. Angela, great to have you back with us.
It's great to be with you, Vince.
Okay, so when you were in the Department of Education, did you ever experience one of these insurrections, or is this a new development?
We occasionally had protesters, but I can confidently and very gratefully say we didn't have any screaming Democrats showing up on our doorstep demanding just to be let in. I can't even tell what these people wanted from the department. I think they wanted media attention, and they sure got it, but they're not making a difference for students, and the entire American public sees it.
So, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but President Trump's focus on the Department of Education, to the extent that he even wants to keep any element of it around, has been to use it to strip federal funding from schools that are teaching divisiveness like racial bigotry or that you were born in the wrong body. He's trying to make it so that kids are actually getting an education so that they can read, so that we don't have these abysmal literacy scores across the country as we do. How could you be opposed to that? What are the Democrats arguing for? The opposite of that?
Well, they are, and it's fascinating to me what gets these people riled up and angry enough to go yell at some poor security guard. He did an incredible job of just calmly handling their meltdown, so I give him a lot of credit.
Yeah.
But look, where was the outrage last week when we found out that 1 in 3 eighth graders is functionally illiterate?
Yeah.
Where was the outrage when students were locked out of their schools for upwards of a year during COVID due to teacher union bosses? Where was the outrage for that? And now when the bureaucracy is under threat, oh, now they care about education? This is laying bare the entire Democrat strategy when it comes to education, which is about putting the interests of adults first and the interests of students last.
Right. And among the interests of students would be to allow them to go to schools of their parents' choice that actually give them a good education, rather than to lock them into the failing schools that too many students are still in. So President Trump this past week signed a school choice executive order. As I understand it, Democrats are opposed to that?
They are. So Democrats are too deeply connected to the teacher unions to do what is best for students. I think that, you know what, we just celebrated National School Choice Week not long ago, and I hope that pretty soon we look back on National School Choice Week like it was National Grocery Store Choice Week or National Doctor Choice Week and think, wait a second, why did we ever have to campaign for the ability to choose where children go to school? Because that's how absurd it is. But the teacher union funding model hinges on keeping poor kids trapped in failing schools.
Yes.
President Trump has said no, power to the parents, and they are terrified that their house of cards is going to crumble.
You know, one of the things that stuck out to me in the school choice executive order was the president cited the fact that when you have schools that are based on where you live, government schools that are based on where you live, what that does is it inflates property values around good schools and depresses them around these bad schools. In other words, like, families are trying to pick communities where they can send their kid to the best school, but then that artificially inflates the cost of property. The left is always talking about, how do we bring down housing expenses? How do we bring down housing expenses? If we had school choice, that would help.
Very much so. It would mean that parents don't have to pick up and move to give their children a shot at a great education. I think education should be accessible to everyone, no matter who you are, where you live, or what your zip code is. The Democrats' whole idea behind this is just throw more money at the problem, but we know that doesn't work. Because look at places like Baltimore and Chicago. They're spending well north of $20,000 per student per year on education, and their results are just an embarrassment. They're letting these kids down. So instead, the conservative solution here, which President Trump is advancing, is let those parents take education dollars wherever their child learns best.
Here's President Trump today talking about this very thing. Take a listen.
Well, I see the same ones. I see Maxine Waters, a lowlife. I see, all these people. They don't love our country. They don't love our country. We want great education. So they rank 40 countries in education. We're ranked dead last. But the good news is we're number one in one category. You know what that is? Cost per pupil. We spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. You look at Norway, Denmark, Sweden, various countries all up and down, Finland, China does very well in education. And then you look at us. We spend much more money than they do per pupil or any other way. But we spend much more money than they do, and yet we're ranked this year, Biden's last year, congratulations, Joe, we're ranked dead last. So what I want to see is education. Number one, I like choice. We all like choice. But beyond choice, long beyond choice, I want to see it go back to the states.
He wants to see it go back to the states. Not hard to see why. So we spend all that money, but 7 in 10 American fourth graders can barely read, and 6 in 10 fourth graders are behind where they should be in math, Angela Morabito. So we're spending a lot of money and getting very little for it.
That is a national scandal, and it cannot be allowed to continue if our country is going to continue to lead the world. Look, President Trump is actually taking a very business-like approach to education and saying, wait, where's the return on investment here? Throwing money at schools does not work, but policy changes do. We're now at 13 states that have enacted universal school choice. I hope that number is going to be 50 sooner rather than later, because every parent deserves the opportunity to escape a failing school. Look, having bureaucrats in Washington make decisions hasn't worked. We've tried it since 1979, for longer than you and I have been alive. We have had this failed experiment called the Department of Education, soaking up billions of dollars every year while student learning suffers. Even somebody who hates President Trump, even somebody who hates everything I have to say, has to admit that our current system doesn't work and we need to try something new.
Well, yeah, I mean, the results are at record lows as we've been going over the data, and we've spent over $1 trillion since 1979. So now your former boss, the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, she's written a piece this week, yesterday, in fact, for the Free Press, and her headline is "Shut Down the Department of Education." She says it's, quote, beyond repair. You just heard from the president. He said that it's time to send all of this money back to the states. Do you think this is achievable, Angela Morabito, that we get rid of the Department of Education?
I do, but with one caveat that it takes congressional action to get it over the finish line. It's not a secret that the Department of Education hasn't worked. Our student achievement numbers are terrible, and it's not because our students aren't talented or smart or driven. It's because they're not being given a fair shot at a meaningful education. So I am hopeful that Congress will do the right thing and really right-size the federal role in education.
Yeah.
As much fun as it would be to just lock the doors on that building and let Spirit Halloween move in, that's not what we need. What we need is an orderly shutdown of the department. It means reassigning its core functions to other agencies that can handle them better, block granting funding to the states so more money flows to classrooms, and making sure that there is no service interruption. We just cut out a bureaucracy that isn't helping anyone learn.
Yeah, or better yet, to stop taking all this federal tax money and just let the states handle it in the first place. But while the federal government wields power over the way that these states conduct their affairs when it comes to the schools, we're seeing President Trump right now exert some of that power, because he is forbidding the bigotry in the schools and the sexual radicalism in the schools, and saying, look, if you want to keep receiving federal money, you've got to knock all that stuff off. Is that a mission that he can emerge victorious in? It looks like I'm watching like Northern Virginia school districts right now who are basically saying that they're going to completely defy President Trump. How do you score this?
Well, districts may try to defy the president's orders, but they will lose that fight, and students will win that fight. Because when pronouns and gender identity and all of that, DEI, critical race theory junk gets shoved out of schools, maybe reading, writing, and arithmetic can move back in. I have never seen a president more prepared to take action on education than President Trump. This flurry of executive orders in the first weeks of his second term, that is unprecedented. And it tells us that the outcry from parents has reached a fever pitch. He sees that. He knows that there is incredible dissatisfaction, especially with the public school system. New polling data came out from Gallup just this past week that said only 24% of Americans are satisfied with the current state of public schools. That is a failing grade. It has to change. And what the president is doing is enacting very, very popular changes.
Right.
And the vocal minority that wants radicalism in schools, they're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah. All right. Well, Angela Morabito, last thing, I think you should join me in my call for President Trump to go to a school board meeting. I think he should go to one of these school boards and take their funding away right there on the spot. I think it'll make a big splash just to send the message home.
That would be what a historic moment. I love that idea. I love that for future Secretary McMahon as well. They need to be where the fight is, and the fight is at those school board meetings. So let's make sure that parents know they are seen and heard and their ideas are valued. They're not going to be shut out of classrooms anymore.
I love it. All right, Angela Morabito, as always, nice to talk to you. Great. Have a great weekend.